her place to live. She could lose all sorts of things. At that point, would you say, yes, I would see that as harassment?
I don't see it as harassment. Do I
Okay.
see it as a hardship? Yes. We have hardships in life. And obviously her getting pregnant and not wanting the child is a hardship. Do I consider it harassment? No.
Okay, fair enough.
This
So,
is this is this is a very this is a life altering event for someone else.
okay,
That's just how I look at it.
Lydia keeps referring to someone else and ascribing personhood to the fetus, as to where you would draw that line and not necessarily consider it
Right,
personhood.
so-
I want to go back to something you said a few moments ago, because I've never heard anyone say what you said a moment ago. And last week when I was debating that preacher, I openly said I don't know when it becomes a person, but I don't think it. I don't believe conception is when life begins. I don't know when it happens, but there's a problem where I think I would have an issue with this as well. However, you said a moment ago, you guys went back and forth really quick about some cognitive disorders,
Right.
and not being able to have the ability to have advanced cognitive abilities. And then you said, right, that wouldn't be a person. And then she said, so it wouldn't be, that person couldn't be murdered. So let's dive into that just a little bit. Explain to me what you mean.
Clarify on that. So the topic of personhood is actually a very lively topic in scholarship, in ethics and philosophical
Oh,
scholarship.
good. Then I don't feel so bad for being completely ignorant.
No, it's fine. It's a very large topic. And so when I'm getting sort of rapid fire questions shot at me and I'm trying to answer them as best I can and as honestly as I can, I don't want to sound like that I think that we should go around murdering children with intellectual disabilities who have low cognitive ability or whatever. So that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that there is a complex body of research that looks at how we can be ethically consistent when ascribing personhood and moral status to various entities. And the entities are not always just human beings. They are also animals and other, for instance, if we were to encounter life on another planet and things like that. So part of the question is, what is it that makes personhood? And we've talked about this when we referred to abortion issues on this show in the past. It can't be DNA because a human cancer tumor has human DNA in it, and it's not a person, right?
Okay.
It's not just a matter of looking like a person. The baby has, fingers and toes, right? Well, dolls have fingers and toes. They aren't persons. So personhood is something a little more complex, I think, than what people often make it out to be.
So what was the conversation back and forth? You said advanced cognitive abilities.
Right.
She rattled off some disorder, and you were like, yep, that wouldn't be a person.
Well,
what disorder did she say?
I can't remember. I'm
Okay.
sorry. I'm really tired.
Please excuse my. I know there are people listening right now that are going to be like, "Wow, she really chopped it up." It's hydranencephaly. It's what it is.
Hydranencephaly, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
It is children that are born that do not have the cerebral hemisphere.
Are you
of the
talking about
brain.
microencephaly? Okay.
Okay.
And these children do feel pain, even though they do not have the cerebral hemisphere.
Well, hang on
of
just a
their
second.
brain.
Hang on. It's more complicated than feels pain. So the way our bodies work is we have reflexes in our spinal cord, right? So if somebody sticks a pin in you, you'll jump before your higher cortex actually recognizes the pain.
Okay.
And that's because there's a reflex arc through your spinal cord that doesn't actually perceive the pain per se. It just fires back a response for you to pull away from the painful stimulus. So a lot of what in terms of the research of, well, this thing can respond to pain. Well, yes, it can respond to pain. There are plenty of organisms that can respond to negative stimulus that don't have higher cognitive functions. There's a difference between being able to respond to pain or to respond to a negative stimulus and ability to cognizantly recognize pain. That's a whole nother thing. So, for instance, your eyes might be able to receive light and make a transmission of a visual image through your optic nerve back to the visual cortex. But if your visual cortex doesn't work, you can't see. You're what we call cortically blind.
Okay.
So there
are, just to clarify though, there are children who are born with a specific disorder or a missing portion of their brain, which
they
then
have no consciousness.
It means they have no consciousness,
Right.
which then, according to the definition of personhood, disqualifies them as being a person.
So, okay, here's what I want to be very careful about what I'm going to want to say, because I want to be clear about what I mean. Somebody with no consciousness at that moment is not a person. There are all kinds of instances in which a person can have no consciousness and not be a person anymore. Like you can be in a long-term coma and your personhood isn't there anymore. Your personhood can fail to ever develop. That doesn't, hang on, but let me just finish. This is a complicated question. I'm trying to give a complicated answer.
Sherry, I promise I'll give you a moment to respond to this.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what I'm trying to say is that personhood and moral status are related concepts. They're not exactly the same thing. So the question is, if we grant personhood to something, do we also have to grant it moral status? And if we grant moral status to something, does it have to have personhood? Those are the kinds of questions that are being fleshed out right now. Peter Singer is a very well-known ethicist who is actually trying to make those kinds of arguments about animals, right? And whether or not to be vegetarian or vegan or all these sorts of things too. So what I'm trying to say is, please don't think I'm a callous, person.
No, and I'm going to ask a few qualifying questions here, because so you would still, this is softball here for you, but of course, just to get this out of the way for people who are frustrated in hearing what you just said, if someone is born without that portion of their brain and they're unable to have or experience consciousness, and that person is then killed by someone else, you would still consider that murder, and that person would be...
But murder is a legal term. It's not necessarily an ethical term, and so that's where a lot of this gets fuzzy too.
Okay.
So here's the other thing. When people ask me my opinion of a baby being brought to term and being born, and, children don't fully establish sapience for a while. It takes some time. Like when they're first born, we sometimes call it the fourth trimester, right? Or the potato phase or whatever. And so that child has a sentience but may not have yet any sapience because that takes time to develop. So then do we murder, 3-month-old babies? No, we don't. Because the baby's viable. And I think viability plays an important role in discussing this issue in terms of whether or not it would be ethical to have an abortion if the baby's viable. I personally think it is unethical to have an abortion when the baby is viable because it can live on its own. I also think it's unethical to terminate the life of a viable human being who has no consciousness because that being can live on its own.
Got you. Okay, that's the clarification. So Sherry, earlier when you asked, so that child can't be murdered, of course Lydia thinks that it should be illegal to kill a child even if that child cannot experience consciousness.
Because of viability.
Right, okay.
For me, that's the line.
And that was the next question, is what makes that life valuable to you? And the answer is the viability.
Well,
the fact that child can live on its own.
Well, what makes it's not a matter of viability. Of value, of whether or not it's valuable. That's a whole nother discussion. But it is in terms of whether or not someone should be able to end the life if the fetus is viable. To me, the answer is no, unless there's extenuating circumstances.
Okay, so Sherry, we've got to give you some time now to respond to this. Yeah. So you now go ahead. We've only got 8 minutes left for the radio portion of this, and I'm going to give the majority of that to Sherry.
That's fine.
Before we go to the podcast version.
No problem.
Sherry, go ahead. Your thoughts on all of this.
Okay, well, I think her last little bit was a good answer. There are many pro-choice people that are actually fine with abortion all the way through term. So it's nice to know that she definitely feels it's immoral once the child is viable. I guess I really don't know what else to say. So that's
okay. Well,
then
I'll that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah,
then,
cool.
Then I'll ask you some questions. I've been taking some notes as you were talking.
Okay. Okay.
So in the instance, and this kind of Lydia alluded to this somewhat when she was talking about bodily autonomy. I'm not required to provide my kidneys. I'm not required to do a blood transfusion. And now and then you brought up, you decided to have sex, you chose to this, and you knowing that pregnancy was a potential issue. So let's pose this, and I've talked about this I think twice on the show. Let's say you and I have a car accident, and it's my fault that we have the accident. I'm completely to blame. You and I are the same blood type, and you are dying because of blood loss. Would you support legislation that would say if you're at fault for the accident and you have the same blood supply or the same blood type as your victim, that you should be forced to donate blood to that victim in order to save the life you endangered?
No, but I don't see a car accident, the scenario you explained, the same as a pregnancy.
What if I was driving drunk? Like I chose to get behind the wheel, breaking the law. I knew what could happen. I have an accident. I hurt you. You're on your deathbed. My blood can save you. Would you support legislation that would force me to give blood?
No, because they could get blood from elsewhere.
Okay, a kidney, anything, any sort of match, anything.
I mean,
like at any point, would you think, no matter how much I'm at fault, at any point, would you think I should be?
No, because there are other medical ways to save my life. And you could even hook me up to a kidney machine. I mean, there's so many other ways to save my life that I just feel that a car wreck and being responsible for a car wreck is different than being pregnant.
So
I
your
don't see this.
So your reason isn't bodily autonomy. It's because there are other ways to save the life.
There are other ways to save the life.
Okay, so in this analogy, there's not. There's no other organs available. Your blood type isn't available, whatever. It's a super rare blood type, whatever. If it was honestly the only, would you support a law saying I'd have to go into the knife and give you a portion of my body for you to survive because I'm at fault in the accident?
Oh, golly, that's actually a really tough question. Because I've never thought of that before. I don't see how you could make a law for that. And
I think that's sort of the pro-life idea, is that no matter what decisions a woman has made that ended up in this spot, whether it's financial decisions or sexual decisions, whatever, she's here, and this fetus needs her body in order to survive. And so in no other case would we demand that someone provide their body for something else to live, even when something else is dying.
But you gave such the most extreme situation.
Well, of course.
I'm driving drunk. I get in a car wreck. I almost kill you. There are no other organs. You have the craziest rare blood type, and only I can save your life. Where a pregnancy, that the mother carrying the child, this isn't some crazy rare hypothesis we've come up with. For the first 20 weeks of that fetus's life, the mother is the only person. It's not some crazy story you've made up. That mother is the only person that can save that child's life.
Well, the point of all the craziness, the point of the extremity,
I do understand, but I just feel that
is to show
we're coming up with some crazy scenario to try to fit into a little tiny into a niche.
Well, right, but the point of the craziness doesn't really matter. The point of the craziness is to remove all the other options and say, I'm the only one that can keep you alive. And I caused your ailments. You're a victim of my bad decisions. I caused it to happen, and even through all of this, you still respect my bodily autonomy to not be forced to provide my body for you to survive. At the end of the day, that's the point.
Okay, well, let's just hope out of common decency, if that happened, that you would feel so badly that, wow, I put Sherry in this situation. You know something? You may take some of my blood to save her life, because I did this to her, and because she's a fellow human and only I can save her life, I am willing to go through the hardship to save that woman's life.
And I would. I would. I honestly would. But the point is,
I feel birth mothers should be.
Well, they should be.
Birth mothers should be that I put this living being inside of me. I'm the one that did it, except for rape. Please let me put that out there. But I'm the one that put that baby in that situation. I can carry that child to 9 months, and let's say I can't afford to have the baby. I can give that baby up for adoption, because there are so many women out there that would love to have a child. And as a woman, that is a gift that I'm giving to the child I'm carrying, and that is a gift that I'm giving to another couple. And that is what being a decent human is about taking care of everyone, not just taking care of myself, but taking care of other humans.
Right.
Okay.
No, you're right. But my point there is that we can't always legislate that type of thing. We can have a moral discussion about what the right thing to do is. And I think if that were the case, you and Lydia would probably be right there on par on decisions you guys would make. But where we start drawing the line is, what should we tell other people to do?
Yeah, I mean, and that's where I just want to say once again, I totally respect your humanism. I respect your opinions. I think that, you've thought about this carefully. And in terms of how you want to live your life, I respect that.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for the radio and podcast version of this. Please join us at login.dogmadebate.com for the remainder of this discussion. We're going to be talking about doing drugs while pregnant. Should charges be filed? Is there a person being harmed in that instance? And we're going to talk about the right to life versus the right to take a life. The conversation continues at login.dogmadebate.com.